Hello, everyone. This is Michael from Xray, and we're here today to talk about embedding quality management into your development workflow with Xray into Jira. We're going to be demonstrating Jira Cloud, use Xray inside Jira Cloud today. So with that, we will just get started. So today's the agenda. This is our agenda we're going to go through. We'll go through an introduction to Xray, its concepts and organization, show you some documentation. Then we'll go through how we specify test cases as well as their preconditions. Once we have those test cases, then we need to organize them using things like the test repository and the test set. And once we have them organized, then we do some planning and execution, the test plan and the test execution. We will take a look at all of these in the software here once we get into this. And then we'll go through the reporting options and the gadgets. We do have gadgets available for your dashboards. And then Q&A is listed down there. So in the show, hopefully we can get done with this in about 35 minutes, which would allow us to have about 10 minutes for QAs. And we will be taking your questions via the QA panel. And then we will be able to answer those following. So what is Xray? Xray is a test management app for Jira. We do have a version of a cloud server and data center. Xray is not a standalone application. It is an extension you can think of Jira, where we provide the test management capabilities for Jira users. We do support both automated and manual tests, and that includes BDD, Cucumber tests, which we will see today. And we can help you organize and plan those tests once you have them. And we will help you, show you how you link them to stories and other requirements. Once you have them organized and planned and ready, then we can help you. You can execute those tests. Manual tests are executed directly from within Xray through the UI. But there's an asterisk there on that bullet because automated tests still must be executed by your automation framework, your automation tool. In my demo today, I'm using Jenkins and Selenium as my automation tools. So I still have to go into Jenkins and say, go run these tests. Currently, Xray does not have triggers to have automatic tests triggered from within the UI. You can create Jira defects directly from within Xray. And I'm going to show you how that's done via manual tests, but you can also do that via automated tests. The API does support that. We do have multiple reporting options. We have some pre-built reports, which I will show you what they look like. And we also have what's called the document generator, which is a template-based, very flexible reporting tool that allows you to use our host of templates that we've already built, as well as build your own templates if you like. And then we do have the dashboard app gadgets you can use. The REST API there is listed. The REST API is freely available to all Xray customers. There's no extra charge for that. We do have, as it's mentioned there, we do have a list of plugins that are already built for many of the most popular automation tools. If we do not have a plugin available, you can use the REST API to build your own connection. You also do not have to use those plugins. If we have a plugin, I use the plugin for Jenkins. Many customers do not want to use our plugin for Jenkins, not many, some customers, because they want to use the API because they want to have more direct control and they want to build that API into part of a larger workflow, for example. So this slide here is an overview of the REST API. The bottom list down there, JUnit, TestNG, Cucumber, etc. Those are all testing frameworks that we support out of the box. We have connections for them already. Most of them, as you see, result in XML reports. The API will help convert those test results into the correct report format. Cucumber is converted into a JSON report. Likewise, if you have some unsupported framework that you want to use that we do not currently have a connector, we do have documentation on how to do that. You can use the API to build a connection with that, and it will output a JSON report, which Xray will know how to process. So when you're using Xray, there's a standard workflow that most people follow when they're using Xray to build tests and link them to their requirements. You start by writing your test, then you organize those tests, then build your test plans around those organized tests, and then execute them. So with that, we have these items here in green, which we call the Xray issue types. Xray issue types are built on the standard Jira issue type. By that, I mean we inherit those Xray issue types, inherit all native functionality that's in the standard Jira issue type, which will become more important here, as you'll see momentarily. Test cases and preconditions. are where the rules on for manual tests. Test cases are where those steps are defined. You will write out in either import tests if you have them existing, which we do have an import tool, or build your tests from scratch, where you'll write out those steps that the user is supposed to follow, and then what the outcome should be. This is also, you have for the automatic test, this will be the link. You have an automatic test issue type that will link to the test that's in your automation tool. That will be where your automation results or your test results are stored. Then we have test sets. Test sets are very flexible. They're just convenience issue types made for making lists of tests, so you can move larger groups of tests around in a more convenient manner. So if you have a list of tests that are for a certain component or a certain build, or you have smoke tests or regression tests, and you want to put them all into a list and you can move them around, you can say, I want to add all my smoke tests to an execution or a test plan. You can add them in group, in bundle, instead of having to add them individually. Now, underneath that, we have the test repository. It is broken out separately because you do not have multiple test repositories in a project. Each Jira project is assigned and has one test repository. When you create a test, it is linked to one test repository, which you will tell it which one. It is only linked to one test repository. A test is never linked to multiple repositories. And that is just for cleanliness and control, so you know where you're going to go look for your tests when you need to find them. Underneath that, we have the test plan. The test plan is a complex management issue type. We'll take a look at that. It is folder based. You'll see how you can build out folders and subfolders, so you can build a very complex test plan. You can have multiple test plans in a project. If you plan on doing test reuse in a project, then you will need to have multiple test plans because a test can only be linked to a test plan one time. So if you want to reuse that test, you can. You will just have to do it in an additional test plan. Then underneath that, we have test executions. So I mentioned test cases are where the steps are defined for the test. In the test case, you do not define the things like the specific execution environment for that test. That information is stored in the test execution issue type. That test execution issue type is where you will tell it the build, the version, the deployment environment. So in my demo here I'm using today, I've defined environment as my operating system and my browser. So you can define the environment to mean whatever is relevant for your world. We don't tell you how to do that, but that information is all kept inside the test execution. It's not in the test case. And you'll see what this means. It'll come together when we go through the software and you see it in action. But as I mentioned, all of our Xray issue types are built on Jira issue types. That's why we have this list on the right that is available. You can use all of the standard Jira built-in features. For permission controls, people often want to know, how do I control who can create test sets or who can execute tests? That's all done using standard Jira permissions. We don't have some other special Jira, Xray permissions model. The same thing with workflows. If you want to build a workflow that includes testing, you build a standard Jira workflow, and then you add testing to it, either by adding a test plan or test execution to that workflow. And then you use the standard number 6 here, the standard Jira assignment capabilities to assign those tasks to individual users. Now, if there is data that we do not capture by default in our system that you want to capture, you can add those custom fields. One of the most common is when people want to capture specific information in a test execution that we do not capture by default. You can add that custom field to the test execution, and then you can customize the screen if necessary to show that and customize those customized fields to the users. Now, lastly, the bottom little note down there, most of our customers at this point are using agile development, so their requirements are found within their stories and epics. But if you have some other Jira issue type that needs to have test coverage, we can support that. You will just have to set up that connection. Tell Xray you need to provide test coverage for that issue type inside the configuration. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at inside the software is how we specify test cases. And with this, so we're going to start with a story. Where I'm going to use is going to be looking at a website, and then I'm going to have define a manual test case, and then a BDD test, which is the cucumber test, and then a generic automated test. So if generic automated tests, whenever Xray receives automated test results from an external system, those results are going to be categorized as type generic. The only exclusion to that is the BDD test, which is a different animal. But for all other automated test results when they come in, those are going to all be categorized as type generic. And then they will be, once they're created, they will be linked back to a story. So with that, I will, oh, I should have jumped to pull this out. Do that now. There we go. So here. So with that, you should be able to see now the sprint board that's inside my Jira Cloud right now. What we're going to look at today is my NDS1, my story, sample story there in the middle that's highlighted. I have open NDS1 here, the detail screen for it. If you're familiar with using Jira Cloud, this should look very familiar to what you're used to seeing. It's a standard Jira story. The things that have been added are, we have this test coverage button here. If you were to review the different link options, you now have a bidirectional link that establishes a relationship between a test and its requirement. This story currently has one test linked to it, NDS 10. And if I scroll down here under the test coverage pane, you'll see this test has not been completed. It's still in the to-do state. That's why you have this yellow band here that says not run. The overall status of the story with regard to testing is not run because the only test that's been linked to it is in the to-do state. Now I'm going to add tests via this blue button here. At this point, I can create a new test from scratch. As I mentioned, when I described test sets, you can add an entire test set here at this point if you want, if you have a group of tests already linked together. And I'm going to add these 3 existing tests that I showed on the previous screen. Now you can search for tests. Now I mentioned earlier that when you create a test, it has to be linked to only one project. You are not limited to use that test in only that project. A test can be used across the entire Jira instance in as many projects as you like, as long as you have access given by your Jira administrator, of course. But provided you have access to those other projects, as you see here, I can go search for tests in 3 other projects. Out of all 3 projects, I can go look for tests that I want to add to this story. I'm not limited to just my current one. You can search for any of these issues. You can also do a free text search here if you know what you're looking for. Additionally, we also have JQL search. So if you use saved searches or you would like to use them and you want to build complex queries, we do support that. Now here's my tests that I'm going to add. These are the 3 that I showed before on the previous screen. We have the BDD, the manual, and the automated test. I'm going to refresh this so it shows up everywhere. So now you'll see we have our links here, all three tests that I just added. And because 2 of the tests that I added have already been executed before and they are in the failed state, the overall status of the story is in the failed state. Now, Xray is a pass-fail system. So if you have a test that's linked to a story, any test that's linked to a story that has failed, then the overall status of the story will be in the failed state. Now, you'll see under this analysis scope screen here, we have the ability to filter what I'm looking at. This will, so for example, I'm looking at all environments. So currently I have no filters applied to what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the latest and greatest, the final execution for each test. I can say, you know what, show me what is the final execution for Chrome. Well, only one of the tests has been executed for Chrome and it failed. The other 3 have not been executed. So you can see, you can change your what you're looking at. None of them have been executed for Firefox. So you can see that this actually changes the overall status of the story. This is important when you're reusing tests across multiple stories, multiple projects, or if you're inside this story, you have multiple versions of a test being run, because you can also filter this not only on environment, but you can filter it on version. So if you have multiple versions that you're testing, you can say, I want to see what's going on with version 1, version 2, etc. I want to change this. Now I'm going to open here. I'm going to go into these different tests and take a look at them, show you what they are. The first one we have here is called the manual test, NDS 8. So we scroll down here and take a look what's included here. These are 2 previously created issues, which we'll go through in a little bit. This is the story, the requirement that this test is linked to, and then we have the test details screen. When you create a manual test, when you select manual from this option, you're going to get this blank 3x3 grid, and it's going to give you this ability here to open this grid up and edit these panels. You have the action, the data, and the expected result. Action being the steps you're supposed to take as the tester to go through, then the data that you use to complete that action, and then what the expected result will be. Now you'll see you do have the ability to add attachments. I do have an attachment added to this system, to this step. You'll see here, I have a picture added. You can also add video. Many people want to add videos to their manual tests for instructional purposes, so the tester knows what they're supposed to be doing. You can do that at this point. Data, I don't have any data on this test and this step, but data would be something like login and password. If you have a static login and password for the tester to use to go through this test. Or if you have a set of the static data you want them to iterate through to go through and complete this test. Additionally, you can use parameterized testing. So you can import parameters. If you have a CSV with parameters you want the tester to run through when they go through this test, you can include that as well. Then you add your individual steps, as you see here. I just have 3 steps for this test. If I wanted to add more steps, I can. I can also grab this and move these steps around if I like. And then lastly, we have over here the call test button. One thing that was added last year is the ability to embed tests within tests. So the example in this case would be if I wanted to make the user log in before they completed the remaining steps, I could call a login test, have the user go through that login process successfully before they were able to complete the remaining steps. And then one of the questions often related to that is embedded tests report back to the calling test. Their test results do not get stored to them. They get stored to the test that called them. Now across here at the top, we're on the test details tab. I'm going to go over here to the to the preconditions tab, and you'll see this test does have a precondition associated with it in DS11 that tells the user that they're supposed to be logged in first. Preconditions can be reused. So anywhere in any test that requires the user to log in before they complete the test, you can reuse this in DS11. Preconditions are informational. They're not enforced programmatically. So I'm going to put this on the test. You'll see it when I execute the test. It's going to tell me as the tester, make sure you log in first, but it doesn't force me to do so. Next, we have over here the test sets. This test is a member of 2 test sets. As I mentioned, a test can be a member of as many test sets as you like. Provided you have permissions for it, you can have as many as you like to reuse that test. This test is also a member of 1 test plan. Now, while I'm here, you'll see this status bar. This status bar has 4 colors on it. That status bar shows the overall current status of that test plan in DS5. When I highlight it, you'll see it has the statuses, but it has the numbers. Those are the numbers of tests in each one of those statuses. So we have 1 pass, 3 failed, 5 executing, and 2 to-dos. Those are the 4 statuses that are supported by default by Xray. You can add custom statuses. You can add as many custom statuses as you like, assign them colors as you like, but those custom statuses you create will all be based on one of these 4 underlying statuses. And then the last tab we have here is our test runs. This is because it's unfiltered at this point, there's been no filters applied. This is the complete execution history of this test. So if this test has been reused in 5 different projects, these are the results from all projects. This is the entire execution history of this test. If I wanted to restrict these results to only a specific project, a specific time frame, et cetera, any of these parameters, I can apply those filters and limit my results and see, so I can see what the performance of that test has been over time. All right. Next, we're going to go through to the BDD test. BDD cucumber tests. Xray can, as you can see here, you can use Xray as your BDD editor. When you select cucumber as the test type, it will give you this blank scenario. And you'll see here when I hit control space, it's going to pull up this help tool to help me build the scenario. You do not have to use Xray as your cucumber editor. If you already are using, we have customers that are using Git and some other tools for their primary cucumber editor, you can still maintain that same working relationship. You do not have to use Xray as your scenario editor, but if you decide to, we can help you with that. You can help you build this. I'll show you in a little bit. We also have what's called a BDD steps library. These are verified steps. Xray does not contain a synchronization mechanism of your BDD steps to your code, but once you verify that a step in your code match works correctly, you can add that verified step to your BDD steps library in Xray. So when you add this step, given I have input items in my shopping cart, you'll know that that step has been verified and works and matches up to a corresponding set of code inside your test. So once we've built this scenario here, we've added our sample code, sample numbers for the to be executed when I execute this test. The rest of these tabs are the same as the other one, as the other test we just took a look at. I don't have a precondition. This is a member of two different test sets. Again, the same thing, a test plan and the test runs. All right, so next, the final test we have is the automated test. Automated tests, generic tests, are a little different beast than the other two in that there's no reason to manually input a test or create an automated test inside of Xray. The way this test got into Xray was once I set up my connection between Jenkins and Xray, I executed that test in Jenkins. The API, when it received those test results from Jenkins, one of the things it does is it creates a definition, which you see here highlighted. This test definition is the map between Xray and your automation tool. So when Xray receives those test results, it matches up this definition with what's in Xray. The first time Xray receives those test results, it's going to go through its database. It's going to look for a test with this matching definition. If it does not find a test with that matching definition, it will at that point create the test for you. Then after that, when you have subsequent executions of that test, when Xray receives those results, it will go back into its database. It will then find a test with this definition, and it will just append those results here, as you'll see here. Xray, again, as like the BDD, we do not have synchronization between Xray and the code. So Xray for generic tests is primary place to have a test, add it to test to control organization of the test, putting into test plans, and excuse me, and to store the test results. But all of the code and everything will be still managed and stored inside of your automation tool. So once we have the test created, then we need to organize these tests. And we'll do that in a number of ways. So firstly, we have the test repository. So I mentioned when you create a test, the first thing it's going to do is going to get linked to a home repository where you're going to go find that test. Then inside of that, you'll have test sets. And I'll show you how you can pull up a list of all your test sets. So you can add test sets into, if you want to grab a test set, add it to a test plan or test execution. And we'll go into that real quick. So the way we get to the organization sections, you come over here, you'll see where my cursor is at now at the testing board on the bottom left. What is pulled up now is my repository for this project. You'll see I have 12 overall tests in this repository. I have 5 of them that are unfiled. That's 5 you see here. Then I have a demo folder with the 3 tests we're looking at today. This folder structure can become quite complex, quite deep. There is not a real limitation on how big this can be. We have customers with thousands of tests in a single repository. So you can make this as big and deep as you need. Because of that, you do have the ability, again, to filter tests. Because when you have a test with 1,000 tests in there, you need to be able to, instead of drilling down to 100 folders, you can come in here and say, I'm going to look for my specific test that I know I need. Now, when I'm in here and I have these tests, these are the 3 tests I'm going to take a look at. I can highlight 1 or more of these tests, right click on these tests, and now you'll see I have this drop-down menu that pops up. There's the different things I can do right from here with my tests. I can add these tests to a test set, create a new test plan with them, add them to an existing execution, create a new execution, which brings me to a point that test plans are highly recommended, and most of our customers make very wide use of them throughout their testing program, but test plans are not mandatory. So I can, if I would like to, go right from here to executing a test. Test executions are mandatory. So if I want to run these 3 tests right now, I can. I just say, create me a test execution with these 3 tests. It'll go create that execution and I can go complete them. I can bypass the test plan step if I wanted to. Which brings us to the next part, which is our test plan. This is our test plan board. You'll see across the top there, we have our test plan, the test plan identifier. NDS5. Again, we can have multiple test plans in a project. You can have as many as you need to support your development requirements. Next to that, we have the status bar. That is the overall status bar for all tests inside this environment and based on this scope, which is all environments final status over none, which meaning if this test has if any of these tests in this test plan have a final execution status, that will be shown versus the non-final. So that means these two tests have never been executed, NDS 21 and NDS 10, because if they had any executions, those results would be shown here instead. Now I can change this. I can say I only want to see it for Firefox, or I want to see it. You can change that. Say I only want to see it for a certain environment. I'm going to go back to my default status here. Now down here underneath, when I click on demo one plan, which is again my 3 tests I'm looking at today, you'll see that secondary status bar has red and green on it because it shows the status of the tests inside that folder where I'm looking. So you can see exactly what your test statuses are for each part of your test plan, as well as the overall test plan itself. Now again, I can click on one or more of these tests, right click on them, and say I want to do this, and I want to add these to a test set, add these to a test execution. And I've jumped ahead of myself a little bit. I just realized here, as I was supposed to go through this. This is what I was just walking through in the software. We have our test plan, and we have test executions we can build. We also, as I mentioned, this is what I talked about a moment ago. I'm got a little backwards. We updated my spreadsheet, and I'm a little backwards, but that's all right. So we are going to go through next to how do we execute these tests. So we're going to execute one of these tests. This is my manual test. I'm going to highlight NDS 8, say create me a test execution with NDS 8. 929. So I can create this and create this test execution. I can put it in a different project. I'm not stuck on this one, but I'm going to leave it in my current project. And you'll see this is a pretty default standard Jira issue creation screen. So there's not a whole lot of specific information. You can add things like I'm going to add here the fixed version. You can add labels. If you wanted to, you can assign it to a sprint or an epic as well. I'm going to create that execution. Pop this execution open. This is my test execution, NDS 269. It includes one test for NDS 8. This execution could have 100 tests in it. You're not limited to however many tests you want to run in there. It can be a combination of manual BDD and automated tests. Then you can, once they're in here, you can rank these tests. And however you want to change them. If you want to drag and drop them, move them around so that they're ranked in the correct order. Then you can assign those tests. So you say, I want to assign what test 1 through 5 to a manual tester. Then you're just going to hit your automated test. You say, oh, I need this as a different tester who's going to go run my Jenkins tests or whatever your automation tool is. I can also assign the overall execution to somebody else. So if I wanted to have a manager in charge of the execution because it's got 100 tests in it, and I have 5 other testers who are going to actually go run the tests, I can do that. I can set up that complex assignment mechanism. And you'll see the overall status of the execution is gray in the to-do state because I only have one test and it's in the to-do state. That's why in this option, at this point here, I have a play button, which is my execution button for this test. This is going to take me to, this is what a tester is going to see when they go to run this test. I've just closed the finding screen because there are no findings at this point. You'll see I'm in the to-do state. The timer has not yet started ticking, so none of these metrics have been filled out. I scroll down here and you'll find the details of the test. This is a manual test. These are previous issues that were created. Then I have the requirement this test is testing. The parameters, I have that little sample parameter I've added. We do have that precondition that tells me I'm supposed to log in first. And then we have the action step, what I'm supposed to do. First step is pretty simple. As the user, I'm supposed to go to the top 10 page of this store. I'm supposed to check and make sure the top 10 list is visible, excuse me. And if it is visible, then I can just hit the green button there, that passed the step, and I can go on to step 2. Step 2 is I'm supposed to select one of the drones from that list. When I do that, I'm supposed to get an add to cart window that's supposed to pop up. At this point, for the purpose of the demo, we're going to say, when I selected that drone and added it to my cart, I did not get the add to cart window. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a comment. Now, comments, in this case, this comment is being used to added to this step because there was an issue. You can have a user or tester add comments for the purpose you need to make sure they've recorded all the information that's necessary for QA purposes. You can also, there's a called the actual result screen. Say that they went through this test step and they saw something that was not quite what they expected, but it was not a failure. You can have them record all of that information as well as add evidence to that as well. Now I'm going to add a defect here. If I knew that this add to cart window was an existing problem, I could just say add this to an existing defect. I could go look up that defect and say add it to it, and it will just it'll update QA that that problem is still out there. But in this case, I'm going to create a defect. So again, it's going to put it by default into this project I'm in. I do not have to, I'm not restricted to only linking this bug to this project. Say I'm a tester and I'm going through this step and I witness a bug that has nothing to do with my current test, but I know QA needs to know about it. So I want to record this bug. I want to make sure it goes into the QA system so that they will go take a look at it, but I don't want to fail my test. That's why we can, we've added this ability where you can log a test, whether it's in your project or not. Xray is going to grab the step information where that bug was. It's going to record the entire thing, but you can still, as a tester, go about your business, complete your test, and make sure that, and you know safely that the QA team is going to know about this bug, but it doesn't have to fail what you're doing. I'm going to add the fixed version here and the label and create this. And then you'll see here, we also have the ability to add evidence. This is, say I want to add a image. Say I want a screenshot I want to add to this test. So we have evidence added to this step. I don't think it added it, did it? I don't think it worked. Does that work? We'll try a different one. Whatever. There it goes. There they're on there. So we had both these pieces of evidence have been added. As I mentioned, that's why we're in the to-do state. We haven't failed because it's we can add these bugs and not fail a step. But in this instance, what we've just talked about is that this step did fail. So when I hit fail, when I scroll back up here, you'll see my timer has stopped, how long I've been working on this test. It has these metrics that were added, the version number I'm looking at, and you'll see if I open the finding screen, I now have these pieces of evidence that I added. All right. Next one is my BDD test. This is my cucumber test. So when I execute a cucumber test in Xray, what happens? And Xray is my scenario editor. Xray will create the feature file that is needed by your automation tool, so that it knows what scenario to build and to run, and then it will send that feature file to your automation tool. In this case, for me, is Jenkins. Jenkins will execute that scenario, and then it will send back those results. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So what I'm scrolling through right now is your standard setup for your cucumber test. Then we get to here. This is where Xray is exporting the feature file. I'm telling Jenkins, go look in Michael's cloud instance of Jira, run this filter 10,003. This filter is a JQL filter that I've written that says, go look inside this project, look for the cucumber test and pull the feature files and put them into this folder. So then then Jenkins knows where to pull that feature file, adds it to that folder. Then it knows how to run the test based on these commands. And then once the test is completed, then this is where we'll tell Jenkins where to put those test results. We're going to say, once you've completed the test, you have this output file written. Go back into Michael's cloud instance of Jira. We're going to output a cucumber JSON multi-part file. We're going to put it into this data.json, and then we're going to put it into NDS, the project. We're going to assign this fixed version 1, and we're going to put it into the test plan NDS 5. So we know exactly where to put these test results. Scroll back up here, build. So it's building that test now. Taking its good old time. Done yet. So what it's doing now is it's querying Xray for that feature file. Xray is sending that feature file back over to Jenkins. Jenkins is running that test, and then it's running through those examples. Once it's finished those examples, it's going to output through the API. It's going to send those test results back to Xray, which will be here. So when I open this up, you'll see here where I just ran this test just now. It passed. And this little button here means it's been run already. And if I click on this, it's going to take me to the execution results screen. And you'll see here, we have our metrics. So this is my story that I'm testing. Here's my scenario that I ran. And here's the output from that test. I passed all 3 steps. They were all very quick because it was just doing a simple arithmetic operation. And you'll see what the metrics were related to that. All right, the last test is our automated test. This is our NDS 31. So, and I'm going to go back here. This is my automated test. It is a Python robot test. Unlike the BDD test, there's nothing that has to come from Xray first. When I say build this test, it's going to build it just like it does any other robot test inside Jenkins. The only thing that's going to happen is once it's all completed that build, then it's going to hit this post-build action screen, and it's going to say, take those results, put them into Michael's cloud instance of Jira, send them there. We're going to use robot XML, the format. Here's my output file name. Again, I'm going to put it into project NDS. I'm going to put it into test plan NDS 5. I'm going to assign fixed version 1. And it doesn't work anymore. Back up here, build this. Now what this is doing is building, you'll see this is popping up. Jenkins called Selenium. Selenium launched my browser. It went and looked for a link. It did some checks on the links. Then it reported back the results. Then it's going to write everything to its to its report file. Once it's completed all of that, then via the API, it's going to send those results over to my Jira Cloud into Xray. I'm going to come over here and get this ready. While that's running. All right, so that's finished. So we come over here and we come over here to the test runs again, and you'll see I just ran this test. It failed, and you'll see why here momentarily. So under the comments section, under the findings, you'll see title should have been X, but it was Y, because the marketing department has changed my browser, has changed the title of the screen from what I was looking for. But as I scroll down here, you'll see here's the requirement that I'm testing. Here's the definition, again, that I'm looking for in this test that matches it. And then here's the steps that this test went through. So it opened the browser correctly. It went to the URL correctly. Then it went to go look for a title, and it didn't match. And then it took a screenshot before it finished. All right. Now we have all these test results. These tests have been executed. We need to be report on all these results once we have them all executed. That's where we have our different reporting options. We have built-in reports. Oh, and you'll see that list there. We'll go through some of those in a moment. those are pre-built reports. You can filter those results, and they can be exported via a CSV file. And I'll show you what that looks like. User-defined reports are based on the document generator, which I will show you an example of that as well. They are template-based, as I mentioned. Those templates are freely available from download within the store that we have that's inside of Jira. When you go into the Manage App section of your Jira administration, there is a document generator section, which also has a link to the store in it. Those templates do have code snippets in them, so you can build calculations and pull all the data you need out of Xray. Those documents can be exported, formatted into Excel, Word, or PDF, depending on the format of the template. And then lastly, we have our dashboard gadgets, and I'll show you what some of them look like. They are gadgets that can be added to your standard Jira dashboard. So testing, where was it? This one. So first of all, we have you see over here on the left where I'm at now, reports. We have test coverage, traceability, and these different lists. I'm looking at the traceability report. So I've not put any filters on it. So this is the traceability of the entire project. I'll scroll down here till I get to NDS 1 so you can see what that looks like. There's NDS 7, NDS 6, and here's NDS 1. So here's my story that I was looking at today. Here's my manual test that I ran today. It failed, and you'll see here's my execution that I ran today, which failed. And because of that, you see the bug that was created when it failed in NDS 270. Now I scroll down here to NDS 9, which is my BDD test. It was in this test overall is in the pass state because it passed its final execution. And you'll see here. And then lastly, the one I ran, which is NDS 31, it is in the failed state because today I ran it and it failed. We have these other pre-built reports as well. Test runs is one that people often use because they want to export data and and do some performance analysis on a test. So this is the entire test run history of NDS 8, my manual test. By default, we grab a fair amount of data to put into this report. You'll see here all these blue check boxes. But as you'll see from this list, we capture every possible piece of data you can imagine. If it's filled out, if you have captured this data and put it into your system, it's available for export. So you can export some very complex data structures. Xray does not have an analysis module, so when people want to do performance analysis on their test runs, they can take this entire test run history and export it from Xray, import it into an analysis tool of some sort. Now, the other thing we talked about, which is our document generator, is this here. Document generator, again, it's the template-based system. These are templates that I've uploaded and configured into my system. So we have test executions, test plans, test reports, test set reports. These are all available for download, again, for free. And then you'll see, depending on the report type, you have different output options. Now, I have downloaded one of these already. This is a test plan report that's opening up for a separate test plan I have in a different project. This is book 98. This test plan report is 55 pages because it is a complete operational history of this test plan. You'll see here, it tells me everything that's happened, who ran it when, what the results were, how long it took, all of the metrics related to it. It's all in here. If I wanted to, I could open up this template. I could edit the code in the template, and I could roll this 55-page report up to a 5-page executive summary, for example. You can change these templates however you like. And again, those are all freely available from underneath here if you're under Manage Apps and go to Xray. And then lastly, we want to look at is our dashboard. My dashboard you're looking at only has Xray gadgets in it. This is just your standard project dashboard. I've just only added Xray gadgets. They are available from here. If I go into the edit mode, you'll see we have, if I look under expand it, you'll see I have all of these different options I can add as well. These are all pre-built. They're available for free to all of our customers who are using Xray. They can also be edited configured, I should say, for scope. So you say, I want to have them grouped by a certain way, depending on what's in the gadget. You can also say, I only want to show me for a certain test plan, certain environment, or a certain project, etc. Now, there's also for each one of these, you can also use complex searches if you want to have saved searches and build and add those to that to build a show specific results. So that we're at 3:25. So we're getting close. So we have about 5 minutes left is it. So this is our final slide here. So if you do have follow-up questions about this, about Xray, please visit our booth and the Xray team. They will be able to happy to answer your questions. Also on number 2, you see there's my email address. Please write that down. If you're in North America and you want to have help, if you're outside North America, please just send an email to mail at Xray, and you will get routed to the right person if you're in Europe or Asia. So, but if otherwise, if you're in North America, just it's michael.lee@getxray.app. I will be happy to answer all of your questions.
Hi, Michael.
Yep.
So we do have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Let's start with this question. So what is the difference between a test set and test template?
A test set and a test. What was the other one?
Template.
We don't have test templates. So test sets are just test sets are just list of tests. So you'll see if I run this test, I have 2 test sets. If I open one up and look at it, they are just groups of tests. That's all they're for. So they're just there's no planning around this. There's no it's just a list of tests that can be manipulated. NDS 76 can be manipulated and added to a requirement list. It can be added to a test plan. It can be added to a test execution. You can just add NDS 76 to it instead of adding all 3 of these tests. But we don't have, Xray doesn't have what some other systems have, which is like a template test, which is you start with like a framework for a basic test, and then you clone that and use it. Xray doesn't implement that, use that approach.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Were there other questions?
Yes. This question is from Shaheen, and here it goes. Can you clarify when you recommend adding a test under a story versus in a test plan?
Say that question again. A story and a test plan?
Adding a test case under a story versus adding a test case under a test plan.
You can do both. I mean, is the question they want to know if you can do either or is it they're mandated? I don't know. I'm not sure what's the question. I don't understand the question. What's the question? Can you?
Yeah, I think we can take this up in the booth.
So you can have tests don't have to be. This test is linked to a story. I can delete this. It does not have to be linked to a story, and it's linked to a test plan, and I can delete that link as well. So test plans, you don't have. They're not. It doesn't have to be removed. I can remove it from there. So when you create a story, test plans are not mandatory, so you don't have to use test plans. A test can be members of multiple stories, can be linked to multiple stories. It can also be linked to multiple test plans. So it's very flexible. We don't prescribe which way you have to do it. It can be done for all or none or both.
Yep. So here comes a generic question. So what is the Xray version which we have used for this presentation?
Xray Cloud, there's no versioning. Xray Cloud is Xray Cloud. We do have versions on, Xray Server, because it's linked to, obviously, to Jira Server, has been deprecated. But Xray and Data Center, which is an on-prem system, there are versions there that are available for download. But Xray Cloud is Xray Cloud. I mean, it is kept up. It is, it's versioned and kept up to date automatically. There's no versioning on Xray Cloud because you have to be connected to the internet, connected to the live system to use it.
All right, so let's take this last question as we have 1 minute. So what is the difference between test runs and test execution in context of Xray tool?
Okay, so that's a good one. So test runs. So this list contains all the test runs. These are NDS keys over here. NDS 258, 256 are test executions. A test execution contains a test run. So NDS 258 245 it contains a test run for NDS 8. The test execution is where all the tests that are linked to it, and it links to the test run itself. The test run is the results of the test execution being completed.
All right. Yeah, we are right at the time. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody again. Let me pull that slide back up. This is our final slide. Thank everybody for your questions. If you have further questions, please feel free to email me directly at michael.lee@getxray.app, and I'll be happy to answer them for you.